last episode when you guys were talking about Oprah and you guys were talking about her bringing on white dudes to just sort of like, you know, guilt trip them and talk to them about white guilt.
Self-flagellate.
To self-flagellate. I was fucking going to say, when is she going to bring on AOC's boyfriend? And I forgot.
Oh.
And I'm so fucking mad. I'm so fucking mad I missed it.
That's really good. I'd be mad too. That's really good.
I was so mad.
Yo, that TikTok where he's just like next to her and he's just like, so why don't you explain why you're a terrible person? Why you're a Yakubian devil?
I just think that it's like explaining racism to white people. No, that's a John Legend situation going on right there. Like, he's gay. He's gay.
Clear male.
Well, it's not even about gay. It's just easily detectable, easily identifiable on all fronts, female to male.
Have you seen his gaits?
His Q angle and his Q slope or angle slopes inward. So that would just automatically to a female gait.
So I'm at Slavoid T.
Alright, this is Shit Spouter 37.
I'm Spicy Boy at He Who's Spicy.
This is Black.com pilled.
This is the Fed Post.
Q slope or angle slopes inward. So that would just automatically lend to a female gait.
He's a highly, easily detectable
structure.
Yeah, straight to gay.
I mean, no, that's just based on like the clothes he's wearing.
No. We're saying he's literally born a woman. We're saying that
biological female.
This is the official. Put it on the record. Fed Post 100% is an AOC boyfriend. I don't know his name. AOC boyfriend truther podcast. He is transgender. He is absolutely transgender.
Is this not Drew's pod as he attempts to split them apart so he can make his move?
AOC's
Drew and on.
Neanderthal.
With that, we just got our one Drew reference for the episode too.
Yeah.
It's the only reason he listens to every fucking episode. He's like, you guys still talking about that nerd ass shit? Still talking about some fucking electoral nerd ass.
I thought about making a Drew joke and I was like, it's not really it.
A Jew joke? Oh,
Drew.
Look, if you have a Jew joke to make, you gotta put that in. I'll splice it in. I'll splice it into the edit because that's top priority.
Yeah, but you can't tiptoe it to it. You gotta say it with your chest.
I can't quite remember it.
Okay.
Yeah, Jack, we get real loose in the back.
Bro, I got my cereal and chocolate milk out.
Right. This is just a character.
This is just a live demonstration of Strasserism.
Right, exactly.
Of course, nobody believes that or thinks that racist jokes are acceptable, but we're just making an artistic performance.
Mm-hmm.
Right, now that the folks at home know what not to do. So I don't know. I'll actually be like I'll introduce the topic, I guess, because I think that's good to do. But my kind of take on it, Strasserite. It's not Strasserist, right? Strasserite?
Strasserite, yeah.
I put Strasserite because, like, when it's right for things, it's usually like an insult. Like, like everyone's like, I'm a Trotskyist. Like, if you hate Trotskyists, you say that's that party is a fucking Trotskyite, pseudo left, Nazi party or whatever. A certain like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like Trotsky.
Pejorative, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like putting oid at the...
Yeah, rightoid, leftoid, yeah.
Right.
Negroid, yeah, famoid.
Right. Classic Mongoloid.
Mongoloid, yeah.
Right.
Trotskyoid.
Trotskyoid.
So how about you give... Because it is maybe kind of like an esoteric term for a lot of people. Why don't you give an introduction, and then I figure maybe one or a couple of us can kind of give our reaction to the piece I read, because I do have some thoughts after reading what you wrote that I feel like could get the discussion going in a good direction. But yeah, why don't you explain?
Yeah, so like Strasserite or Strasserist or Strasserism basically is a thing that no longer exists. But according to like a certain group of people on say, online left discourse, it's a very big thing. It's very dangerous, and you should all be very worried about it. What it's supposed to be, it's a semantic like weapon, right? It's just like, so everybody's like, oh, I don't like that person, they're a Nazi. What if they're kind of a bit left wing? And so you can be more specific and like hone that weapon in and say, actually, they're a Strasserite. And it's basically the same as other words they use, as like Nazbol or National Bolshevik. So it's a semantic weapon that's derives, I suppose, its value, its impact from like a real historical phenomenon that existed for a very short amount of time in the 1930s. So do you want me to like sort of talk about like OG Strasserism, like the actual real Strasserism that was real? Or
I mean, I was really. I mean, you can absolutely if you want. I was really just gonna say like, just given the basic outline of like, it's essentially like left-wing Nazism, and it's thrown around. It's thrown around similar to just old vanilla or Nazism classic, as I like to put it, as basically like greater than the sum of its parts. It's more just kind of. I mean, it's just it's a boogeyman in the world of political economy. But yeah, I mean, like, how would you describe? I mean, it was synonymous. I mean, Nazbol is like literally was just a faction of the National Socialist Party, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that. It's only of interest to you, the differences, if you're like a political scientist or a historian, because these were pretty pretty marginal movements. And they had like journals and they released interesting maybe articles and stuff like that. And the Strasserists especially had power to a limited degree for a certain amount of time. But for the most part, it is just a little bit of historical curiosity, right? Yeah.
Sure, kind of this maybe similar to this like obsession with theory that we were talking about earlier, of like maybe it's a little more smoke than fire.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you're related to theory, because when you call someone a Strasserite or a Strasserist or whatever, you are showing to everyone that you are in fact a very smart person and you know a lot about history.
Right.
Calling someone a Nazi might be good enough for the plebs. I watched a documentary on Nazi Germany, and they talked about Strasserite, and I looked it up on Wikipedia, and I'm an intellectual.
Yeah, it's the thinking man's Nazi insult.
Yeah, it's like the brain Wojak. Yeah, the dude is like sitting on his brain smoking a pipe.
Yeah.
Right. It's the perfect Twitter insult, right? Like it's like, the pedestrian normie will call someone a Nazi, but the Twitter brainlet will call someone a Nazi, but with more steps.
Yeah. You did a no growth. You did a Strasserism. Yeah.
But what Strasserism really was, okay, unless people if people are curious, were these two brothers called Gregor and Otto Strasser, and they were very instrumental in the building of the German Nazi Party up to be a national force in German politics. And I suppose what unites them is that they both were sort of economically radical, as well as being very ultra nationalist and being very anti-Semitic. And so, like, I do a little brief description in the article. Basically, they were like they sort of wanted to empower the workers as a class without really destroying the class system and capitalism, and so they would basically talk about Jewish finance capital and juxtapose that to, say, a productive heroic capitalism. Like, that's borrowing from Mussolini. Mussolini talked about like there was this heroic capitalism in the old days, and now capitalism's all shit and decadent and degenerated. And
right.
But the ultimate aim of Strasserism was basically to rejuvenate and revive the German nation's like spirit and its power by harnessing the working class, like not destroying capitalism or not, abolishing wage labor. It was basically it was still class collaboration, but it was a class collaboration. This is what I got from it anyway. A class collaboration in which the workers have more power than they do now, and their sort of power and energy becomes sort of welded to the Nazi project and the furthering of the German nation, which is like the ultimate end, what they want. They're like ultimately they're nationalists before everything else.
Right.
Yeah, and you compare that to what people on the internet are saying, it doesn't really make much fucking sense, right? There's no one who's actually. I mean, I'm sure there are some random people in like 4chan or random like message boards or Twitter who are like, I'm actually a real Strasserite and I hate the Jews and corporatism is great and I read all the books and I'm well, good on them. There's people who say they're Satanists. I don't care about them either, but as a real political.
And like with the Satanists, like they're basically all just like Stoics and libertarians, right? So there is also that lens of it just being like, oh, this is kind of just like a postmodern way of really just saying you're a different thing.
Yeah, and Strasserite so I'll say Strasserist as a real political identity that someone will hold is like that. It's probably someone who's spent a lot of time on the internet and has a very developed online persona and wants that to, wants to curate that by going into these niche, dangerous, subversive, transgressive directions. But even these people are so small that like they're barely worth talking about. Like, and what's bigger is Strasserite as a label, as a pejorative, and that is basically, in my experience, Strasserite, and then also like other terms around it, like Nazbol, like I said, are thrown at people for like any number of things. Basically, just if you're not, like I've made a little list here of things that you can be called a Strasserite for, and it's basically conservative or even like insufficiently liberal attitude on social issues. Like you're not liberal enough on social issues. And that mark changes over time. So a very liberal position on social issues to one person or at one time very recently might be considered Strasserite now.
Absolutely.
And any sort of touching or move towards nationalism is Strasserite. And then what's more kind of concerning, say if you're a leftist or a materialist, is that emphasis is on I've seen on universalism and class over particularism, identity. Those are seen as Strasserite maneuvers, and I think that's and there's a lot of people who do that who are very sort of Marxist types who aren't in favor of nationalism and don't really have that any conservative impulse. But if you're universalist and materialist, even that can be enough for you to get dubbed as Strasserite by some of these very strange people.
Yeah,
people will also say class reductionists too,
absolutely.
It's all the same sphere.
Yeah, same sphere.
That's sort of like a less bombastic or less inflammatory saying the same thing. Yeah,
right. Because Strasser implies you're an anti-Semite off the bat.
Yeah, I think it goes class reductionist, Strasserite, Nazbol. And they all mean the same thing. One just clearly is a euphemism, and then it builds up to the last one, which clearly looks like Nazi.
Right, exactly.
Rhetorically is all the same fucking thing.
Exactly. And as far as the terms being niche, which they are, and maybe not that many people are even using these terms, they are indicative of a bigger trend. The bigger trend being, to discourage any class collaboration where there might be divide on the culture war that capital is, feeding every day. If you have class solidarity, but there's division on these cultural issues, that can't be fostered at all. And if you do, you are pretty much in line with the far right, or if you're on the far right, you're pretty much in line with the far left. So it's again, it's like an obfuscation thing. It's like the class thing, the lumpen thing too. It's like they are intentionally. Again, this is why the average leftist thinks that the average American or the average person is a rich Nazi. Because it's obfuscation of both things. It's an obfuscation of the class thing to make it seem that all these people are rich, which there's no way mathematically that they could possibly be all rich, and also that they're all Nazi, which is if you have, we talked about this before, where sort of apolitical social beliefs in the 2000s are, made you a liberal. And now today, the left is more pushing a social agenda. And now if you have apolitical or just ambivalence on a lot of social issues, you're a right-winger now. And not only that, as wokery moves and the goalposts move, you're a Nazi now. So, it's further obfuscation where it's they want to make, anything where they're the whole intent is to break up solidarity. That's the whole intent. And these are the two big avenues to get it done.
Well, you look at who's usually doing that, and especially within the left, and it's usually those PMC types that we were talking about earlier, which is where it becomes, where the issue is that the PMC coming into the left is, in fact, an issue, obviously, because of that obfuscation, and also because of that tendency to obscure class relations and water down stuff and try to oust people who are actually trying to build real class coalitions and real class consciousness. And so that's why there definitely is a huge risk to having any PMC involved in a movement, and that's why they don't need to be involved in it directly. They need to be, if anything, auxiliary, if anything, but definitely not allowed to be discourse makers, decision makers at all. So there needs to be some sort of concerted effort among more materialists, even Marxist people, people who are actual Marxists, who would still call themselves a leftist, but are actually principled Marxists who aren't just like liberal play pretend bourgeois socialists. We need to have some sort of concerted effort of calling that out, I think.
Absolutely.
Among the PMC and among like that type of class obfuscation. I know that it happens. Obviously, we're talking about it now. I just don't think that it's on a large enough scale.
Yeah, and I think Slav's point about the whole like the class reductionist thing is a euphemism for Strasserism, for Nazism. And if you go further to straight up being a Nazi, because I've personally been accused of being a Nazi many times by the online left or whatever. And you think about it on its face, it's just insane, regardless of what you think of my beliefs or whatever. That I'm a Blasian Nazi or whatever. Like, not to make it too anecdotal, but it's just on its face. Like, if you're just somebody on the street, like, how does that make any sense to anybody? Like, just on its face, like, what I mean? So it's like that is direct obfuscation, where it's like, all right, everybody's a Nazi. If everybody's a Nazi, then what the fuck does Nazi even mean then? The term loses meaning.
Expanded out so much that it does become meaningless. I think one of the things that the chief insight of how I started the article, which is just like a brainwave that came to me one day. I was doing something dumb probably, and I just got like a thought in my head, and I was like, oh, I think there's something more behind the Strasserite when you hear it leveled at you. Like, I think in an article I kind of say that it is it's basically revealing a fear that the left as it is constituted today really has, and it is like you were saying, CRK, at the average person is sort of this violent, conservative, reactionary, hysteric. And
yeah, you mentioned that in the article. Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
I have this, and so the left sort of, a lot of people just say it openly that they think that, and a lot of people just feel like that, and they kind of like hide it because it's not fashionable to say. But there is this sort of fear of ordinary people as these conservative reactionaries and violent bigots and stuff. And so
Absolutely.
That is the grounds for the threat. That's the reason why people, some people talk about Strasserism or use these various terms, which seem so ridiculous. It's because they think, oh, okay, somebody is talking about stuff in a way that will appeal to these people who should be my people more. So, you know what I'm trying to say? Like they're worried that that these ordinary people will fall for your trickery, your evil trickery, whereas. And or at the very least, that your sort of evil trickery will, Nazi trickery will distract from their project, which is to carefully tutor and educate the masses in what they should really do.
I think that like a great example of this happened closer to 2016, just when like populism was more in the public lexicon. Populism was talked about a lot more, and like honestly, like the assumptions made of talking about it in a synonymously bad way, even before the qualifier of saying white populism, which was so popular, the assumptions made of thinking about that basically just like, a fucking zombie horde kind of way, already say everything about, the reactionary capacity of the people saying it, which is ironic since they're, passing that mantle onto other people, obviously.
Yeah,
well, it's interesting that.
Sorry.
You go ahead.
Cheers, man. I was like, when you were talking about populism, then I hope this isn't going too far off into the the distance here, but I think that populism versus elite divide was so useful to see people talking about it and how they talked about it. I remember there was this guy, he's like a kind of a pop sociologist. It might have been like, no, I can't remember his name, but he did this week. Okay, all right, guys. Here's my big thread on populism. One of 25, and how he starts talking about it is like, populists include, and in his list of evil populists was like Trump, Modi, Orban, and Maduro, and Morales in Bolivia. And you're like, okay, all these people are really fucking different. The common thread was that they were populists, right? They appealed to the people and they eroded the structures, institutions that the elite had set up, and this was the reason why they were a problem, because they were going against the interests of the elite.
Exactly.
Whatever you think about those random people that he strung together, the only thing that you could tie them all up with was the fact that they had sort of an anti-elite even at times that's a bit hard to say, but like they had a sort of a real genuine connection with the masses.
Right.
And this
Absolutely.
was scary because the problem even isn't them. It's the problem is that that the masses are being empowered politically, and that's very dangerous for these people.
Yeah.
It's like the reactionary propaganda that is like the Dark Knight Rises, right? Like people still talk about the meme Bane and everything, but like framing it, and I think it is very intentional, like framing it as like, oh well, like to indulge in, talking about, some kind of form of political mob justice is to advocate for a miscarriage of justice, because the people don't know what they want.
Right.
People, irrational, chaotic, violent,
Gritty and shit.
Yeah, and it's not even new, like it. The Ken Burns has a really great, short-length documentary on like Huey Long, who was a populist in American history, and he interviews journalists, from like the Deep South, talking about him. They were writing, about him back in the day. They're like, old at the time of the interview, and like they fucking hated him, right? And they talk about him like he's this completely immoral figure, which is interesting because maybe he was kind of amoral. He was like certainly like power minded, like we had kind of talked about earlier. But it just seems like such a perfect parallel. Like I don't think. Well, I mean, actually, now that I'm putting it this way, it seems kind of obvious that like if you run on a political playbook that antagonizes the establishment, then the establishment is going to oppose you and say that you're not so good. But yeah.
I think that dynamic. Yeah, thanks. That dynamic is more important than the left and right one, as the left and right is we talked about today at least, because one thing I noticed with when left Twitter goes on, it's just focuses on Latin America for any reason, and like sort of the socialistic governments in Latin America or whatever, however you want to define them as. One thing you start to notice is that a lot of people in America who are like really solid liberal Democrats or Warren people, even a lot of Bernie people, when it comes to a lot of them who come from these countries like Venezuela or Bolivia or Ecuador or places like that, they vote right in those countries, and they hate the left wing leaders there because of the real dynamic here is populist is the populace versus the elites.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's like we had talked about, earlier, like the fact that like class interests, even for like the upper middle class, are like kind of just confound everyone uniformly, and like the mass proletariat, lumpen proletariat. You know what I'm going to say? I'm stoned now. I'm not going to try to say
yeah, good.
Lumpenize everybody. It's just like a capitalist wet dream. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, like to run for office right now, as a politician, to run for public office right now, if I was to do it tomorrow and I'm looking dispassionately like a sociopath at the different narratives for just like politics that I can choose from, like the Hail Mary play is the populist run to just say, look, like I understand the source code of everything that's going on right now, and I'm going to do the taboo third rail thing and fucking dispense a pill to kind of get you a little bit more mindful of class dynamics in this country. I mean, it's like under fucking neoliberal fucking future shithole world, like it very clearly in the last several years like gained a little bit of traction and everything. And obviously, like as for like the whole list of people that are like considered populists and everything, it definitely like I think is relevant to say that it's with discourse, it's at least like kind of in for a penny, in for a pound sort of thing. With these things, like they're not what is a populist, right? Well, I guess they're just populist because they kind of posture like it, but then at that point I'm not really sure what the difference is.
Well,
sorry,
I was just saying just to cover my basis as far as like the person that wants to say like, but obviously Trump isn't a populist, which like is and isn't true.
Right. I've always viewed populism as just an anti-elite, anti-establishment sentiment in this context that we're at right now. And it's always been astounding to me. I don't know if you've seen this, Jack, but like people who completely dismiss the populist right or view them all as AstroTurf, which is the most insane shit to me. Like the Tea Party that came after 2008, like Occupy was real. That's not AstroTurf, but the Tea Party is AstroTurf. And, to whatever degree there's seed money of Coke or Soros, whatever boogeyman, whatever the fuck, it's undeniable that there's people moved by it. And the lengths that the left goes to, dismissing them and acting like there's not, it's so contradictory to me. It's like, all right, are the people too stupid? And, the average person is too stupid and, that's why they're not on the page you're on? Or there's not that many people who fuck with this. Like, you can't have it both ways. I hear both arguments. I hear that it's not popular, it's not real, it's not a real movement, and also that most people are too dumb to be on the thing that we're on. So which one is it? It's contradictory in itself. But this is the thing: is like it's undeniable they have a force, they have a presence. I think they're bigger than every other group as far as the populist left, the neo-lib, neocon cohort. I think they're the biggest one, and I think it's not to be dismissed. And they. The populist right has a better pitch at the moment, because the left is, a joke right now. But, I think, this is something we've been talking about since the beginning of the pod, is like, these are people that we should not be writing off. And, I think there's a lot of agreement, even if you look on the electoral level, a lot of debates was like, all right, some of the dissident right is against regime change. So is some of the dissident left, whoever you want to put in that group. But there's a clear sentiment. There's a clear fracture on both of those stages, that there's some anti-regime change, anti-corporate trade deal, sentiments. And, there's overlap there, and it cannot be denied. And, I just noticed that, if you talk about class in isolation, you're framed as a right-winger or a Nazi even. And I don't think this is by accident. I think this is by design. I think they want, if being a class first person is reactionary or right-wing, and that's condemnable off the bat. I think this is exactly what they want. They want it to be a purely cultural war discourse, which is unwinnable. There's no winning for either side of those. I don't care what anybody says. Neither of them are going to win this, right? So that's where they want to keep the whole framing of the whole discourse. And then from there, there's nothing to be built from that. There's nothing to be built from that. There's no numbers there. And I think this is exactly what they want. And I don't get how people don't see that. But, that's how I view the Strasser, like the collaboration of the right and the left.
Yeah. That got me, I was thinking about that, and it's like a more broader sense. As when you were talking, I started to see a few more things like come together. And it's like there's like a big transformation going on like the left, right? And that transformation is been happening over the past couple of decades, really. And it's the transformation, like we touched on before, of the left from being a tool of which the working class is the dominant group, and the PMC sort of like follows along, and it's still significant, but sort of, right. But to a sort of the left becomes a political tool of just PMC political interests, with working class, which is getting increasingly like even lumpenized. Working class taking a more and more back sort of step to that. You know what I mean? Like it's become more of it's becoming more PMC and less worker, right? And I
absolutely
think that the Strasserite and things like that, those sort of terms, they are kind of tools in that sort of ideological battle, or even if you want to get more like materialist, they're just symptoms in the discourse of what is happening in fact. And Strasserite's getting leveled at people who are sort of not on board with that project to sort of, make the left a professional middle class tool, rather than a workers tool. And
right.
But I can't see this process stopping. To be quite honest with you, I can't see the left as a sort of a tool going back the other way. I just keep seeing the PMC winning and winning and winning.
Absolutely.
And happens when they do win. Well, the castle they've conquered, it's going to be filled with fucking holes. It's going to be half burnt down, and it's going to be useless. And because the PMC as a class, like you were saying before, is vocal but ultimately not that powerful. So it's all the left can be once the PMC win, once all the Strasserites have been purged, is sort of like an interest group of rather than one of the sides of politics. It's going to not be right and left anymore. That left is going to be interest group within a broader new structure, and I think that structure, when that whole thing settles down, it's going to be more populist versus elite.
Absolutely.
Mass.
Absolutely.
Mass. And this left will be off just advocating for PMC cultural things and some minor reforms, whereas most of the masses of the people will be organised in a different political way. And it might even look a bit more like, say, and this is not a good thing at all, but it might look a little more like Rome at the end of the say Republican period, when you got the main factions there were the optimates and the populares, right? The people who the rich senatorial class people, and then the populares being the people that are the politicians that draw their support from the increasingly poor, increasingly large amount of of masses in Rome. I don't know. Maybe that's a bit too far, over a bridge. But I can see that dynamic. If someone was to make that argument to me, I'd probably be like,
I think so. I think so. I've been saying that I feel like capital has since the 90s, at least on the electoral level, has strategically pivoted from the GOP to the DNC as a better bet with sustainability. Like we talked about this with Hobbes, like sustainability. Like what is going to be the long-standing structure of authoritarianism or power or whatever, and it's going to be this woke capitalism. That's what's going to last the longest in a end of history type of analysis. You know what I mean? Like that's what's going to linger on. And the proof of that, whatever proof I need to make of that, is like, what do the richest people in the world at least pretend to ascribe to? It's left ideology. At least however you want to frame that. Like if it's just left idpol or whatever, they ascribe to that. So that's the proof right there. I mean,
yeah, and I think a lot of people haven't got up to speed on the fact that when, like, say you and me are talking about left in that sense, we're sort of going, we don't necessarily mean like Marx. Like, a lot of people wouldn't say, if you were to say to someone like, "Oh, Jeff Bezos is a leftist" or something like that, or people who are of more Marxist tradition might call you a fucking idiot.
Absolutely,
like, he's a capitalist, right?
Absolutely.
But as the left has shifted from being a predominantly or dominated by workers to something that's not, or the meaning of the left and what the left as a term entails has changed.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like that.
Yeah, the modern working definition of the left is far different than like a right-left political spectrum type of situation.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, Marx is on the left and that's who
exactly
start today. Like our left today is something far different than that.
Because now it's all based on idpol. So to be left or right is entirely based on an idpol spectrum and a continuum. And Bezos tweets out BLM. You know what I mean? He's pro BLM and like Jamie Dimon, all these fuckers, right? So
left, yeah,
and they vote Democrats. So like if you're going to frame them in any conventional sense of left or right politics, they're on the left. And that doesn't mean, that's a good point you made. Like it's not to say that they're socialist. That's not what I mean. I'm just saying that what leftism has become is this bullshit, and that's why it's it's closer to capital. The left is closer to capital, and I think the people who are really aware of it know that it's like you said, Jack, that there's no reversing this now. It's so far off, it's so far gone that it might as well just be abandoned and go somewhere new. New terminology, new framing, whatever you got to do. That shit is dead. That shit is dead.
Yeah.
It's like I realized I always used to call myself like a leftist like in the last couple of years, and sort of like I'm left, though I don't always agree with the things that the left say.
Right.
And what I would get from my like pretty apolitical friends was they'd be asking me questions like, "Oh, what do you think of like fat phobia?" What?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Oh, you're leftist. Are you a vegan? I'm like, no.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, I say to them, I would argue with them. I'm like, dude, no, left actually means like socialism and working class.
You thought, Jack.
I realized that I was wrong and they were right.
Right. Exactly. I don't know when it took me to make that realization as well, but like I started to realize like it's not about what I thought it meant, and it's not been that way for a long time. Like PETA, like these people coming into my neighborhood and like protesting outside some mom and pop like butcher shop or whatever in the hood or whatever, and some just small Hispanic family, and I'm like, yo, what the fuck are you doing here? What the fuck are you talking? This is like they're associated with the left. Like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, shouldn't you be in front of fucking Tyson or Purdue, whatever the fuck? Like, do you have any idea what the fuck you're even trying to do? Like, I mean, so it's like, it's completely, it's lost. It's completely lost.
It's just become associated with in a cultural sense, like I feel left has become associated with like divergent and self-consciously like divergent and it's like self-consciously, if not in fact, what's the word? Like counter culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Counterculture.
Mm-hmm. On the other hand,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So like I didn't probably explain that well enough there or use the right words, but it's associated with sort of self-consciously divergent lifestyles and like a sort of culture that's thinks of itself as transgressive and anti-establishment, right?
Yeah, it's just another identity.
That's up for bloody debate at this point. But it's also materially often associated with a section of capital that is ascending, right? A section of capital that's building its power and getting more and more strong. Whereas the way I would define right is people who associate themselves with how things should be, conservative stuff, how things how they used to be, like traditional lifestyles, and capital that's actually in decline often associates with this.
Yeah, I think that like one thing that almost like just like needs to be said at the beginning of conversations about like the left and the right is that like in just the Western fucking world, like think about if like you have two political factions, and like one political faction has one way of doing things and the other has another way of doing things, but like one of those also just like through a long-term just like monopolistic cultural project made itself also synonymous with moral virtue and good, and like the other didn't necessarily do that. It didn't not do that.
Right.
It just like it's not also just like a synonym for fucking saintliness.
Right.
If you wanted to, there's an article about this I need to look at that's going to touch right on this, and I think in the Bellows, one of my mutuals, Marty, I saw it before I came on, and I thought, okay, I probably should have read that beforehand. But it's like it seems to almost be like if you want to take this line, it makes sense that like the right is associated with the old church, and the left is the new church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and
exactly.
that's absolutely what I think like part of like Moldbug's idea of like the cathedral really gets at well is that you have the kind of like legacy franchise, which is a great way of conceiving of the right, and then you have the new blood shit with with the left, right? It's
secular Protestantism against old-fashioned Protestantism, which is almost like Catholicism in this new day.
Absolutely.
It's Meghan Markle versus the royal family. Right.
Yeah,
and like when we saw how that went, like she won a fucking publicity battle, right? And now you got fucking Oprah having, some middle class white guy tell her that he's actually really a racist. It's just, it's the whole. I don't know. I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah, I think that's a useful way of conceiving of it.
Yeah. I think Moldbug's like interesting character in that he says a lot of really fucking like dumb shit to me. Have some framing that's like sort of like useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. But like, but I always find it hard to like read anything he writes or like sort of like have any sort of redeeming thoughts about him, because like just on a purely superficial and aesthetic level, he's just always fucking annoying me, saying like dumb fuck shit. But yeah, I'm like that a lot. I get superficial like annoyances of people.
Yeah. I always think just with his stuff too, like I don't know. I don't want to get super into it, but like ultimately, like it needs to be just kept in mind that like neo-monarchism is just like the ultimate bugman shit. And so, like, it's just trying to be like, oh man, like, please just run the government like a corporate structure, and just like leave me alone and let me be happy. Is like, yeah, I mean, it's just the most cucked form of government that's going around right now. And so it's just like at the end of the day, there's always that. So just keep that in mind.
I don't know how you can have we probably shouldn't go too far into this, but like, I don't know how you can have the monarchy without and still be left alone. I can't picture.
Yeah, you just give supreme power to some dude and then think he won't do anything with it.
Yeah, what?
But that's the thing, is that it's just like the peasant living on like the Lord's lands doesn't really like need to have any conception of the duties or like inner workings of the Lord's life or just the power he wields over him. So it's literally, what was that?
He's just got to do what he's told, the peasant.
Yeah, exactly. And it's basically just like that, and just being like, well, like the corporate structure is this observable thing right now that's like getting really desirable outcomes. And so why don't you just like, well, and that's where I think it's like kind of, it is like fundamentally right wing, is it's just like, oh, like that's just going to work better.
I don't know. I feel like
it's a sort of efficiency mindset. Well, Elon Musk's fucking.
Well, it also just comes down to like one thing that I think like China meaningfully does just beat the shit out of us on, that I think people should think about more, which is just like having any kind of idea of what all of this is for and where your society is fucking going. Like they have a goal, And like, well, I can't even celebrate my identity as like an American citizen. And so how the fuck can I possibly take any kind of stake in like a project for the future that I might be a part of?
Isn't that sort of like something that's leveled against? I saw it recently. Someone talking about that as a criticism of Marxism, and they said Marxism sort of has a goal and an endpoint, and that's why it's a bad philosophy.
Right. Well, and that's so much of like the issues a lot of the time that I have with the discourse online with Marxists is the determinism thing is where you naturally come in contact with issues a lot of the time.
I still haven't negotiated that perfectly well. I've no idea how the determinism versus agency shit works.
Can you guys expand on that?
I mean,
thinking about it.
Can you guys expand on that a little? Because it's kind of going over my head a little bit. What do you mean by that?
I mean, I think it can just be really. You go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know. Like, I think you probably know more about this than me, so I'll probably leave it to you.
Not even. I wouldn't even say that. I would just say, and fuck, maybe I'm totally wrong, but just the Marxism basically just being an attempt to have. It's a science of the way shit works. Right. It's a science of the way shit works, and so like, just baked into that. I mean, in the capitalist system, and this is, all of us operate on a lot of these assumptions. Like, we know the ending is baked into the beginning. Right? It's a synecdoche or it's a synecdoche or whatever, right? That movie, synecdoche.
Right.
Like the end is written in, the end is written into the beginning. And I think that a lot of the time, and this is by no means like a really like deep or like cutting observation. It's probably pretty simple and like pedestrian, but it makes it so that like something that's modern and supposed to be progressive and non-dogmatic, I would like to think, as Marxism, becomes very fucking dogmatic very easily if if you have the secret tome where you get everybody to like open it and you'll see your future and you'll see the future of everyone you know and you have the plan in your head and like this also sucks as like a factor to like reconcile when you're like broaching like you're introducing ideas to right-wingers or just normies generally who think that like Marxism is literally just like the book that tells you to like send people to the gulag. Kill your parents. Like
be gay, do crimes.
That's the be gay, do crimes thing. Anyways, the determinism. I forgot how we even got on.
Another route that the determinism kind of feature, or I'd say strain of Marxism is that one of the main things is that it's a really mechanistic, a material approach to historical materialism. So, like you're saying, Slav, it's the immortal science, et cetera, but what they view, it leads sometimes to apathy in a way, or to that accelerationist stream, or kind of sect of that, where they think that as historical materialism is laid out, capitalism is going to, because of the inherent contradictions within it, have to change and come to an end, and that will just lead into socialism, which will lead into communism. So it leads into this like deterministic strain where people either are like accelerationist and like just like boundlessly hopeful that that's just like, oh, we're things are set, we're going to get there in the right place in the end anyways, or apathetic to the point where they're like stuff will just kind of spontaneously get there, but when the true reality of it is that things could swing in one of two directions when capitalism crumbles.
Right. Thank you for saying that, yo. Because the accelerationist thing, like, it always like irks me a little because radlibs love accelerationism, and like, not to keep hammering this point, but the Reed theory thing is very like, a lot of the left just seems like evangelical to me. Like the whole wokery thing, like, oh, read this HuffPost article and you'll know how to do it right. And like, yo, there's mad different interpretations for how to be woke because everybody appreciates empathy differently. There's not one strict, biblical way, literalist interpretation of how to do it. And the same thing with theory. Like, there's so many divisions and branches of how people have interpreted Marx and all this theory. So it's like, why do you think that, your answer of like read theory or read the Bible is an answer? That's not an answer because everybody's going to interpret it differently. Like, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like that whole thing is really dumb. And they're usually the ones who love accelerationism. And it's like, why do you think these things are going to happen exactly the way you think they're going to happen? Like, I don't know. There's always this like like cockiness of like, oh, well, shit's going to collapse. It's going to be great because then we're going to win and we're going to have the revolution. It's like, yo, what if the fucking right beat you to it, because I think that's what is very clear to me right now, is that they're beating us to it, and like, you know, that is terrifying to me, and that's why I'm not an accelerationist, because I don't think, you know, I'm not trying. Yo, this shit is going too fast right now. I'm trying to slow this shit down, because yo, the rate we're going and the direction we're going is the right running train on everybody. You know, when capital collapses and the center folds, the right is gonna be there to seize the moment and have people, because they weren't calling everybody bigoted retards like we were, you know.
Or they don't, and there's a power vacuum, and you have, like we were talking about earlier, like some feudal technocracy hell with like Jeff Bezos coming in to fill the void.
Right.
People that have
Right. There's a lot of ways it could be fucked up.
And as a quick side note, you know, like the neo-monarchists like are accelerationist, and they basically just think that like the internal, I mean, this was like what Bog was saying earlier, like the contradictions will just be its undoing,
right?
And like, you know, your Yarvins of the world aren't like people that are like advocating a lot of action right now. It is like anyway.
Bog's point was really good about how Moldbug thinks of it. It's like, oh, we'll just let the other side win, and then
could you explain his point real quick?
Good point. So apparently the idea is that Moldbug, whoever this guy is, he's kind of like a right-to-way guy. He's like, he thinks that supporting Biden is a smart move because it'll expose the contradictions or heighten them.
I think it's more just that the contradictions are so glaring within the left right now that like propping them up, centering them like so many black trans lives, centering them will make it so that process.
Their failure will be our opportunity, essentially. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of sounds like.
And then at that point, like CEOs basically just come in, and it becomes like, as if I understand it correctly, just like a cyberpunk future. You know. Anyways.
Yeah. I mean,
I think we were talking about before about like there's this. Sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, like there's this. There is this feeling that amongst a lot of people on the left that like, particularly those who position themselves around Marxism, is that like every defeat is just another step on the road to the final victory, right? And that final victory is should.
Yeah.
And at times, I think it also contradicts the Holy Scripture itself, right? Because if you read its Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels, they also say that the outcome of class struggle is either, you know, a victory of the progressive class, and the or is never highlighted here, the common ruin of the contending classes. So Marx and Engels leave room for the, you know, everything fucking up. A lot of other people don't seem to do that. They think, we're going to win. Okay.
Yeah, socialism or barbarism.
There's always like this cockiness of like, oh, you know, just things will work itself out. Like there's nothing proactive to be done. Like that's the most extreme, like, you know, rad lib take I've heard. It's just like, oh, we don't even have to do anything. Like just keep pushing it off the cliff. And, you know, it's just mind boggling to me that like there's nothing we have to do. Like that. It's just mind boggling. Like,
and that's where like COH I think brought up just like technocracy, and I think that's I think a little bit more accurate to the lib mind, is just that like, oh well, the experts will come in,
right,
and they'll just save us, and it's basically just like a political philosophy of being like, oh no, your dad's gonna come pick you up, and it's like, you guys got to get fucking real. Like you can't just keep rolling and then have the expert come bail you out, because like they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, I think also like
if this is right, but weren't you predicting CRK? Weren't you predicting it was going to be something like a military coup in the US the next couple of years?
I'm
sort of halfway there. If I would have read it a couple weeks ago, I would have thought it silly, but I'm halfway there at the moment.
Yeah, come on board. Yeah, see, this is, I mean, I feel like the authoritarian thing is just inevitable, because, you know, I think Trump is the more popular candidate by the numbers, because he's, you know, appealing to the populace right, however fake or superficial it is, and they can't beat him, so they have to rig it. And a lot of that rigging, and, you know, again, I have some healthy skepticism of COVID, you know, however you want to paint that, but, you know, I believe a lot of it has to do with the fact that this economic crash was inevitable, and, you know, this is an excuse for increased, you know, you don't even, you know, if you don't want to talk about the intentions or how this came to be, that's fine. But the end result is the same no matter what, right? There's increased surveillance. That's a fact already. There was increased martial law. It's already the authoritarian creep is already happening. So
yeah, that trend was already established before.
Exactly. We can debate about the intentions or how much of it was deliberate. Like I'll be off the deep end and crank about that, whatever. But the end result is the same. This is how it's moving, and this is seemingly cover for the crash, and now it's all a COVID crash. Anytime you hear about it among the elite, it's a COVID crash, right? Nothing to do with capitalism, nothing to do with the elite. Yeah, that's all been wiped away. They've got their alibi, right? And now, as things are getting worse and we're approaching another economic cliff, and we're in this new bubble, we're in a dead cat bounce. However, it's going to crash again very soon. And the perfect thing to quell the unrest, or this is the other thing. Not to go on about too much, but like Trump, right? If you just go by elite narrative, right? Elite neolib, New York Times narrative, right? Trump is going to lose, right? That's what they're saying. Biden's going to win. So what's an inevitability of that is that there will be Trump supporter unrest, right? Isn't that an inevitability? They were threatening it in 2016, right? They were saying that. They were saying
threatening what?
They're threatening, there's going to be MAGA in the streets. If Trump was in the last debate saying like, they're rigging it against me, I'm going to lose, and they're rigging it for Hillary. And then all the New York Times, I remember these fuckers were like, there's going to be MAGA in the streets if he loses. He's not going to accept the loss. Do you guys remember that shit? I remember that shit.
Yeah. Well, also just like, they've been selling the specter of like militant right-wing presence for like 4 fucking years, and it's all a fucking lie.
Well, I don't know if it's a complete. I think they have a president. I don't think it's a lie. I think they have.
Well, they like right-wing militias exist, but like the idea that it's like particularly some kind of issue right now is a complete. Well, anyways, we don't.
The gravity they assign to it isn't actually.
It's a fucking red menace, dude.
Okay. Well, okay. So if we go off of the assumption, the popular elite assumption that Biden will win, right? We all tend to lean that way. If he wins, right? Is it not a guarantee that there will be some MAGA unrest? So are you saying that you don't think that's likely? Because the elite they say that, the New York Times say that, they're worried about that.
I think the question is more like, does the entire pandemic context increase the likelihood of something that could be described as MAGA unrest? Like I sort of agree with Slav. Like I think it's more of a specter than it is a threat. But given the riots that we're already seeing, and given any emotional tensions,
Yes, sorry. For the record, regardless of the outcome of the election, either way, there's going to be unrest.
Yeah.
Okay.
After the election, there's going to be one way or the other.
Okay. See, this is what I'm saying. It's like there's certain things, despite how much I might be a crank, or how much we might disagree about what's at play, who's doing the side, who's pulling the strings, whatever. Right. The end result, we can all agree, and the elite narrative has been clear on this. Biden's going to win, and there's going to be some unrest. I think these are solid facts, right? Mm-hmm. And we're already moving towards a more authoritarian state, more surveillance because of COVID, because of the crash, because of BLM, more surveillance, more martial law. They had curfews, for fuck's sake. Like, they're doing lockdowns. Like, if you remove the COVID factor, and this is something I've been talking about a year ago, is that, there's going to be a crash, there's going to be increased id-poll insanity, and they're going to do authoritarianism. They have to, that's the logical chain succession of events.
Well, also, I think the timeline I have been working off is, I assume the second spike is going to be sometime in November. And so you can get, the election, there'll be the buildup to the election, which is going to at least somewhat coincide with the incoming second wave.
Absolutely.
And then the election's going to happen, and it's going to be some media shitstorm one way or another. And, Trump could ham it up if he's on his way out, so he can do some sort of media career, and the right could play it off. Or let's say somehow Trump wins, the left is just going to melt down, and that's going to be immediately followed by the second wave and whatever lockout is necessary to, keep people inside their houses. And everybody's already been squeezed for so long that that's going to result how it will. And I think the political landscape will sort of be a means for that catharsis.
Absolutely. It's a perfect storm because, again, you don't need to believe what I believe about COVID, about it being bullshit, the second wave being bullshit. You don't have to believe that. The fact is the end result will be the same, right? They're going to say you need to stay in your fucking house, and, we're going to enforce this with the military if we need to, and that's why, and look, the left, if Trump wins, right, the left unrest or whatever, it's gonna be a joke, dude. We already saw that. The pussy hat march, nobody gives a fuck about that shit. They can make fucking pussy hats. They can do whatever. Nobody cares about that shit. It's not gonna be real. If Trump loses, because he's got people with stakes. Again, the populist right have stakes. The left does not have any. These people on the lib left, they don't have any real stakes. They've got no incentive to do anything real. They're full of shit. The right, the populist right, if he loses, right, and they think it's rigging, whether it is or not, I think it will be, but you don't have to believe that. They will be out there. They will be out there, and they will be fucking serious. They will be tight.
I'll say though, like that. I don't think that they're going to be like out there like fucking killing people. Like they're gonna do like they did with like this, like the 2A protests, and like they're just going to protest in a much more effective way and just like stand outside a state capitol with guns or something. Like I don't think like my Republican friends over my like liberal friends are going to just like walk outside with a 45 and like blow someone's head off. Like if anything, what's happening right now is like this is what a left response would be, is what we're seeing right now. And like it's fucking people's lives up plenty right now. You know, so like I don't know. I don't think that like a right backlash would be any worse than the left.
I mean, I think the right-left backlash is the wrong way to think of it. I think that there's going to be the economic backlash, and that's going to be filtered into the political, but it's not going to be primarily political.
Yep.
Right? It's just shit's going to hit the fan because of the conditions, and I think the way that people might process it would be political, but certainly the way the narrative is going to be shaped will be political.
Yep, you're totally right, because that's what BLM was like. It became, it was an economic thing. Right, his counterfeit 20 and the conditions that the economic crash that led to that frustration, and it funneled into this left impulse to fund the police and racism, stupid shit. So it funneled into that, but you know what the root is. So yeah, you're totally right. Either way, we're hitting some real shit. People are gonna be fucking tight, and I don't think it'll be like a dismissible light thing. I think we're really at a fucking boiling point this time, and I think this is we're in a bad state. This isn't a couple years ago. This is in 2016. Like things are a lot worse, and I think to whatever extent they go out there, maybe they're not really they're not going to kill people in the street, sure, but I think it's not to be dismissed how serious they'll be, what type of organizing will come out of it for the far right, for the populist right. Like I don't think that shit should be dismissed. I think it'll be a real galvanizing moment for them, and I think they'll be fucking they'll be pissed, and I think they'll think it was rigging, and I think they're going to increase the boot as a part of that, like you're saying, Spicy, if it's however it manifests to left or right frustration of the material unrest, the boot will come down either way to put down whatever. So I think it's every day that passes is the only thing that I can see happening.
And I think the boot as well is going to be in response to the economic nature of the unrest. It's going to be received and rationalized politically, but I think the relationship is going to be, economic unrest, boot to quell the economic unrest, but nobody recognizes the economic because it's all filtered through the political, and the timing of the election is just going to be perfect for painting that narrative.
Yep, totally. I mean, that's how I view. I mean, Jack, what was your thinking in terms of like how have you shifted on how that might play out?
The thing that was said before about the second spike in November, I thought was really interesting. Like, because what is an election? It's a handover of power that's sort of ritualized way to make it everything legitimate, right? So if there is questions of the legitimacy of the election, then that's when all bets start to come off. So like say because you get the impression with the whole coronavirus stuff that a lot of places in America couldn't organize a route in a brothel to use they're just very bad at organizing anything. And you want them to organize an election that's going to be in the middle of an epidemic, and I don't think that's going to work very well at all. And the person who loses out of that will say, "This is fucked." Like, look at all these irregularities.
Right.
Because you can't really. There's no way you can functionally really do that election. Like, given the circumstances you're in and the tools you've got. The other thing I was kind of interested in is when you go down the line and you do have things orientating to more of an elite populist the dynamic than a left-right dynamic, when America might, get its, might get another sort of Huey Long figure on a national level, and it might get when it might find itself with another sort of Caesar figure,
right?
That who's not really concerned with the left-right dynamic as much, but just appeals to people on a populist, in a populist way, on base material incentives, and just going to be doing that for any number of intentions. From I mean, that's the thing. That doesn't have to be a thing that's associated with the left. It doesn't even have to be a thing that's associated with the right. It can just be someone who is interested in having power.
Absolutely.
I think that's something that you got to think of. And I think a lot of people are worried in the future about, everything's going to go in towards Nazism in the US. Well, I don't think that's going to really happen. But what you definitely will have is competing, I think, authoritarianisms. You're going to have probably the authoritarianism of someone like Bloomberg on all his technocrats versus the authoritarianism of someone who we don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing for the masses who are going to be increasingly precarious, increasingly lumpenized.
Tucker Carlson.
I've seen people suggest that, but I don't think.
I don't have to be authoritarian. But Tucker Pillin.
The thing is, I can't see anybody in even around the political sphere at the moment who could take up that Caesar sort of place,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Caesar sounds a bit larpy, but I'll say who takes up that long sort of Huey Long figure. Like, there's no one who has that. Trump is the closest, and he's sort of very ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's like, I can't possibly see it in the forecast for like the foreseeable future right now. Everything is so bleak, and it feels like we're already like signed on for like the next 10 Avengers movies with AOC and Ilhan Omar. And so like our future is already a foregone conclusion within the game right now.
Mm.
It's hard to even, God. Yeah,
I know.
I mean, it would have to just be like another just like totally out of left field thing like Trump, except hopefully. I suppose the way what was that?
Yeah, like to be honest, like I think the way the American sort of society, the way the political economy, if that's the right term, is going, it's getting more and more like Brazil. I think people would agree with like that.
Yeah.
In terms of society, and I think as that happens, you're going to start to see a more Brazilian type of politics. If that makes sense, right? I think there is, if that trend keeps going along, there is the potential to see a Bolsonaro type figure in
that's what I'm saying,
United States rather than a Trump figure.
Yeah, I was literally, as we were talking about this, and like what Slav was saying, like how it's not foreseeable. Like I was literally thinking of Bolsonaro. I was really thinking like maybe we can't see it here, but globally there's already some precedent for this in certain parts of Europe and like in Brazil. And, like there's already. I'm not part of the, hysterical libs that are like, oh my God, we have fascism today. They're Nazis right now, blah, blah, blah. I'm not like that. I'm just saying, it's hard to deny that, again, this shit is about to collapse. I really believe that. I mean, there's some people who don't believe that, but it's going to get worse and worse. And as it gets worse and worse, the hunger for a populist answer is going to be more and more. And the right version of it is a lot more palatable, and they've got a better pitch, and they've already been working it, and it's a lot more digestible. There is no left equivalent, really, that's like that accessible. And the center,
not that could work in, say, the American society as it's constituted.
Right.
The only,
wouldn't that I might totally like out myself as not knowing shit or something, but wouldn't that kind of just be Bolsonaro? Because I don't think like Bolsonaro's not like far right wing necessarily, is he? Like I thought he was kind of neo then.
No, I mean,
depends how we define far right.
Yeah. No, he's not like a fascist, Nazi or whatever. But like, again, like
he's like everything that a left wing person would complain about Trump. Bolsonaro is significantly worse, I would say.
That's the thing. That's the thing. If you just look at it relatively, without looking at it like, oh, we have a hard threshold of like, all right, now you're officially a fascist Nazi. Like, he's further down that line than Trump is, and Trump's further down the line than every other. Than his predecessors or whatever. To a certain, at least on the social things, maybe to a degree, whatever. But like again, like to the degree that Trump's just pandering, whatever, he's not serious. Bolsonaro's slightly more serious, and then there is a hunger for people to be super serious about it. And I think thinking that it's I get why it seems like it's far fetched or whatever, but like, and I know this is a rad lib fear. I'm just saying I don't think. There's precedent for this shit. So in history. So, what I mean?
There are models throughout the world as well that we can look at.
Yeah. I mean, I could totally imagine it happening. I don't rule that out in my mind at all. You said lesbians are toxic? You said they're mad toxic, Slav? That's kind of true.
Oh yeah, no, lesbians are absolute. How did titans of toxic masculinity?
Titans, yeah.
And I have nothing but respect for it.
Yeah, I'm solidly for a lesbian. Good on them.
Oh no, absolutely. I guess I should say. I mean, it's more like butch. We're talking butch right now.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
Well, that must be why they beef with the trans people and and the feminists and they all got beef with each other.
Oh yeah.
Different vibes.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about aesthetics. As who's all about that? I mean, there's a lot of people. I think you put on the anti woke left that are just aesthetic types. Say
yeah.
About aesthetics.
Yeah, I'd say Red Scare, but I don't want to be too mean about them. I guess because like a lot of people in our circles like them, so I guess I should.
Yeah, I haven't got anything against them either. I reckon they're kind of cool. I used to listen to them occasionally.
To be fair, too, I think they're a little bit more like cultural critics than like political.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, they're women.
Like that's got us placed too. Like,
oh, 100%, 100%. Especially because I do think that like, I think that a lot of hay is made out of like how the left kind of thinks of themselves as underdogs, which may or may not be accurate, but I do think that there is something to be said for like the hunger that comes with like wanting a cultural analysis that like reflects your own worldview. And
definitely.
Yeah, I'm really into film, and it is like pretty isolating just how fucking barren that entire world is.
Yeah.
From kind of my look at things.
Yeah, I just feel like the right thing as like a subversion thing that we always talk about, Slav, like that shit is just like, this shit is so tired. Just like that's like the hipster thing is to the trad thing, or just to like, that the whole basis of like taking on those politics is primarily for that, and not really because you actually believe it in a lot of their cases. Like,
Yeah, you're talking about like
and say that sort of shit. Like,
who?
So it's sort of I mean, I don't know. I imagine a lot with like, sort of trad stuff has a certain aesthetic around it that can sort of make you feel like, confident and like, you know what you're on about and everything's like established.
Yeah.
I imagine that's really attractive to some people.
Yeah, because they know that the left is like the elite and closer to the elite, and all the aesthetics of the elite are left wing. So if you really want to be subversive on a power line, right, they think that the subversion is to be woke, and I guess by the numbers maybe, but not by power lines. And by power lines, I mean the subversive thing is to be right wing, like poll wise, I guess, in that context. So I guess that's why it's like an aesthetic thing. It's just kind of like it's just as tired, or like it's like try hard. You know what I mean? It just gives me that vibe. Exactly. It'd be the same thing if I saw like hard left punk anarchist aesthetic like maybe 10 years ago. It just gives me this like really try hard feel, and then it feels like the politics come after. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like I don't fuck with that.
You
shit.
want to mark yourself out as a certain sort of person first, and then like you might read a Wikipedia article on like Lenin.
Right. Oh, I want to be part of this scene. Oh, I'm in this music scene. What do you guys? What are your politics? All right, word. Like, you know what I mean? I don't fuck with that shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I suppose it's like what was I gonna say? Fuck, lost it. I got hangover brain. Leave me alone.
You're good.
Well, you are Australian, so we're just gonna assume you're hungover all the time.
Yeah, probably for the best. I didn't drink for like 4 months during quarantine.
Oh shit, that's strict.
Yeah,
just trying to get back into it.
I lost my grip. I used to be like lifting and nutritious and all that, and I lost my grip. I've been like sauced and high, like hard to stay on the wagon in quarantine.
A lot of people are like that that I know, my friends, and I've sort of been going the other way, which is nice.
Monk mode.
I feel like I sort of like was like heaps sort of like a bit freaked out by Corona at first, and everyone else was like gonna do nothing. So I was really worried about it. And then when everyone else started worrying about it, I was like, I don't have to fucking worry about it.
That's the same thing.
I had the exact same
thing.
Yeah,
same thing. I was at first tweaking like the mayor, de Blasio in the city was like, yo, we gotta shut down this series, we gotta shut down everything. And I was like, holy shit. I went to the grocery, the lines were mad long, people stocking up. I've never stocked up. I've never been a prepper. I'm like, yo, let that shit crash. I'm not gonna be prepared for any of that. Like bugging out or whatever. Like, with the bug bag or whatever. But like, yeah, I just like stocked up, and I was.
Excuse you, bug out bag. It's a bug out bag.
Oh, right, the bug man bag, right? Yeah, you know. Yeah, I was like a little tweaked out. But then the libs in my office that were like panicking about like Ukraine phone call, like they were panicking about COVID. And I was like, oh, you know, that calmed me down a lot. Immediately, I felt like a wave of relief. I was like, all right, you know, because their gauge of what's severe is like, you know, bullshit.
Yeah. Very similar thing happened here. I just remember what I was going to say before. I thought it was kind of interesting. What you were saying, CRK, was reminding me of who's that lady everyone loves, Angela Nagel, right? She when she was talking about transgression, I reckon a lot of people they just like transgression for the sake of transgression. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people go towards that far right stuff. And like, I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of people who like want to go back to more like traditional conservative lifestyle or just a more normal lifestyle. That's fair enough, you know, if that works for you. But I think there is a certain type of person who's like online, extremely online, and that trad thing becomes sort of a aesthetic, like a reaction, like in both sense of the words, like a reactionary aesthetic choice.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah. 100%. And I like the like one of the like points she makes about it that I always kind of like to go back to is the whole like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the idea that like transgression in itself is kind of virtuous. And I guess I would maybe I would assume that people would describe that as being like, you know, oh well, like, you know, the old order is exploitative and immoral, and so anything that's transgressive will, you know, obviously push back against that. You get where I'm going with this. And like how like the alt-right, the new right, whatever the fuck we want to call it, like really was like a really clear like lesson in how it is just kind of this hollow, empty bullshit.
And it's also so connected to the whole social media and online stuff.
Absolutely.
You know, a lot of people, like, I'm sure you guys are the same. You know, you like going on occasionally, just fucking with someone, like, you know.
All day, yeah, actually, all day, yeah.
I'm sure I'm not alone here when I say that. Like, I feel like a lot of the alt-right stuff from the start was grounded in like trying to fuck with people. Like, it was grounded in trolling.
Right.
Oh yeah, I mean, just
people were like trying to separate the trolling from the ideology, and I'm like, I don't know if you really can. Hey,
like, you mean like the trolling is considered political?
Yeah. Or there is, or it's not like, it's more personal than it is political. You know, it's more that personal.
But the way they utilize it is as if they're being political, even though it's not.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like they used to say, "Oh, we memed Trump into office." I don't think that's what happened, dude. But okay. I don't think people like got in for a Trump peppy meme. Like, got into like the what was it, like 60,000 swing voters in like Michigan, and that's this old 60-year-old like factory worker boomers that just like
Yeah,
I think there's sort of a divide there, right?
Yeah, it's like the whole vote Trump despite the libs thing. It's like, I sort of agree with that, and that's sort of in the line of like trolling, but they missed the whole thing. It's like what Sean was posting about that Reddit post or whatever, like, oh, all these people care about is to own the libs. And it's like, you know, that comes after the fact. That's not the initial cause. The initial cause is you've been fucked by these people. They don't give a shit about you. They call you deplorables. And then the trolling comes after that. Like, you know what I mean? They always get it, they reverse the causality of that. It's like, you know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah, well, I think a lot of like the nihilistic like Pepes online, or even beyond that. Like, I think a lot of it just becomes like
it's hopeless.
Well, yeah, no, it just becomes like you know, anti-Semitic joke is made. Is this person an anti-Semite, or is this person just like talking about anti-Semitism because it's like third rail and totally, you know, exactly like if like you swapped out anti-Semitism in another universe for like, you know, talking about some random fucking thing, they would talk about that other random thing instead.
No, absolutely,
really,
absolutely.
But yeah,
no, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, nothing. I mean, we're just.
Oh no,
I think there's a little bit of a delay here. So.
No, I just feel like a lot of that, like that angst and that subversion or just need to like, you know, fuck with people is just out of frustration of not being able to fix the material thing around you. And a lot of these people are fucking, you know, incel or just like, you know, without jobs. Like they're not doing too good. And people always want to dismiss that part, that they're not doing that well. Like their families aren't doing that well. The economy around them is not doing that well. And that's just a fact. And they, you know, it's just a way of like, oh, these elites are like telling me how to talk and like woke school me all the time. Like, well, I'm just going to say the N-word just to stick it back to you. It's just like a venting of like, I can't do shit about the real shit around me. So this is my, you know, expression of like the frustration. I feel like that, you know, people mix that up. Like that's not the reason why they're doing it. That's not the reason. You know what I mean? It's not for its own sake. But they always do that. They always say it's just, oh, you know, they're just doing this to do this. Like they can't take any steps past that.
Yeah, it's interesting to try and sort of tie that whole subculture to like a material basis. Because I think that there is something there, definitely. I mean, but there's also things like there's people who are doing quite well who get into that stuff. Well, but like that's always going to happen, and it's it's an important question here, like whether this is primarily a cultural reaction or whether it's like it's based in like a material need that's like manifesting itself culturally. If that makes any sense.
I think like a lot of like I almost feel like a normie just like calling them like pepes or something, but like but whatever, I'll just use that term for whatever we're talking about, of like the posting, right? And I was going to push back a little bit on what you were saying, because I do think that like a lot of it is, and I think that it has its own manifestations on the left too in different ways. A lot of it is, I think, just like kind of just middle class cruel hollowness. That's like driving a lot. Like and like honestly, like I almost say that as someone who's like experienced that personally, like myself kind of committing that, growing up in a suburb and kind of getting a lot of kicks out of like fucking with things when I was a kid, which is true, which is normal
kids. Absolutely.
Kid shit to a certain extent. But I do think that there is, like, not to overuse the word, but I do think there is kind of like a nihilistic core to a lot of this stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah, the affluenza kind of thing.
And I suppose maybe that that sort of, we talk about nihilism there, that can be sort of founded on like a material lack or a material like abundance. Like you can be rich and nihilistic, and you can be nihilistic because I don't know, like that sort of stereotype of like you're saying, the rich, affluent person who's got nothing, no purpose, etc. Or you can just be nihilistic because you haven't got anything and you've got no prospects.
Right. It could be both. Yeah.
They're getting mixed together, maybe.
I think sometimes that middle class, like hollow kind of comes from a place of trying to justify the role that they play as far as in class relation. Like most middle class people are PMC or something along those lines, to where they kind of uphold the general system as it is and have some sort of administration or something over the lower class people and people who they can then look down upon as being like less than, because they can use racism or whatever as a justification for the fact that they're betraying their own class interest as well.
I think that's like totally accurate. I think there's like a kind of anxiety that comes out of doing what the middle class does best, which is kind of just denying its own position. I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys, but
definitely. Like everybody wants to sort of be like the everyman online, and no, everyone's just to be like an ordinary, just like functioning sort of like just no one wants to be known like as a person who's like exceptionally powerful or rich.
Yes.
Right. In this scene, everyone's normal.
Yeah, look at Jacobin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just look at the entire coalition.
People, LARPing as sort of, they're sort of like, is it, I don't know if it's the right terminology, but they're sort of like declassing themselves, like they're separating themselves from class.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. This takes a lot more thought than I'm able to muster right now, but maybe I'll do this later.
There's definitely both. There's definitely both. There's definitely the people who like have material desperation and they're just like fuck it, and then there's people who maybe the affluenza thing, but that's what I think
they both come from a material base.
Right, one way or another. Absolutely, like everything. But I feel like Red Scare, like they are not materially, they're materially set, and that whole thing of taking on the subversion of like right-wing idpol or whatever, and virtue signaling that way, or the trad life shit that's adjacent to them or whatever, like that shit is them. That's exactly what you're talking about in my mind. It's like them trying to seem like normal people. And they're like, oh, what's subversive? All right, well, this shit is subversive. Like on a very surface level, right? Not really subversive, like on power lines. Me and Slav talk about this shit all the time, like what subversion is. And it's like, it's not on power lines. It's on surface level culture shit, And that's how I distinguish those people, is like someone like the trad leftist or, who doesn't need to take this position, but they're just online a lot. And they're like, all right, how do I seem more like a regular person when I'm clearly not, and I know I'm not. I'm too smart for it. I'm smart enough to know I'm not. you know.
Yeah, I mean, like in the case of like that, I mean, it makes me just kind of think of like old school Hollywood, right? Like pre-actual Red Scare shit, where like you're like going to parties and you're like bumping elbows with people and drinking martinis, and like everybody was a fucking communist because like they're socialites and they're like part of a scene where like there's a social
reason why they would always invite like organized crime figures to the Hollywood parties and stuff like that.
Right,
it's dangerous and it's different and subversive.
Right.
Exactly. And so yeah, I mean, it's like this isn't like a new thing by any measure. And like I mean, there's a material basis for that. I mean, maybe this is kind of goofy and a little profane, but like they're all going to the fucking parties together. They're all, you know, I mean, these are all people connected by their money and things like that. And I don't know. I mean, these people are. It's boredom just plays.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked about this before too. Where it's like a lot of the ideology is for the plebs, right? And then the elites, they dress up in ideology just to control them. They don't really believe any of that shit. Like they're, you know, it's just useful. It's just a costume at the party. And you know, I mean,
yeah, like exactly. They're concerned with more the real things. Like when you were talking now, I was thinking like all these sort of people that are doing this transgressive stuff, whether, you know, like I'll say the people who are like deliberately trying to be transgressive, that you can honestly say that.
Right.
Like, they're not like the oligarchs, are they? You know?
Right. No.
Yeah, like the people who are really in the power elite, they are sort of like respectable centrist Democrats that like lean woke. That's what they're all like, right? Except for like you get people like Elon Musk who play around, and he's probably considered an idiot by the rest of the power elite because of the shit he posts on.
Yeah. Or maybe he's going for the Trump energy thing. It seems like that sometimes.
Yeah, it's very hard to do though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like,
I've tried.
I think you might be right there.
No, I think it's a whole. I mean, it's like somewhere in the spectrum of Trump and Kanye, right? and like I don't know. I mean, like your Jeff Bezoses of the world aren't doing stuff like that because like they're I mean, you know, this is no like profound thing to see, but like they're brands and companies in and of themselves, right? Like like there was that Joe Rogan appearance for Elon Musk where he like smoked a blunt, right? And like I'm sure that like that financially affected a ton of fucking people.
Every time Elon Musk does some bullshit on Twitter, Tesla stocks just fuck up constantly.
Oh, really?
You can keep an eye on it, and it's just like he's like, yeah, fuck Belize, we'll go in there and like coup them all we want, and then it's like Tesla stocks have dropped.
Maybe he's doing it on purpose to buy in cheaper or whatever. Who knows?
Yeah, he could be. He's trying to short it.
Who knows?
Well, yeah, I mean to be fair, like, and you can say this confidently because it's happened to him before, but like if he was actually like a catastrophic threat to the company, he would be voted out. Like the board would take over, which has happened before. So I mean, it's absolutely a calculated risk whenever they let him do retarded shit like this.
Yep. And he's a celebrity. You know, I knew some kids in college that like really like loved the guy. He has a cult of personality thing. And you know, they knew his schedule, like what he was doing, and like they have Tony Stark, impressions that they put on him. Like,
yeah, that's exactly it. He's sort of like that sort of Tony Stark to a lot of these sort of Marvel people.
Yeah, he's like the boy genius tinkering in the lab when it's really not him. Like he had the PayPal money, he was there when it was right place, right time, and he just been moving around. He's not a complete moron with all that stuff, but with the STEM stuff. But I mean, it's not him. Not him.
Yeah, I mean it's always somewhere in between like the normie bugman shit of like this guy's a messiah and the leftoid brain like all of these guys are complete fucking morons.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. The guy has a functional public profile.
Right.
I'm sure he has some basic fucking level of intelligence.
Absolutely.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the left always paints like Silicon Valley as like these fucking like moron fail sons, and I'm like, I don't know about all that. Like that's kind of I don't know.
They're failing pretty good. Hey.
Yeah, exactly. If it's so easy, why don't you do it? If it's so easy, then
the fucking fail sons are all on the left.
Right. They're projecting like, why didn't I fucking buy PayPal back then? I had the money.
I feel like it's like people look at that picture of Elon Musk like pre-PayPal when he had like that, twerpy haircut. Just like, well, this is the dude, and this is how he is forever. And it's like, well, once you become rich enough and you learn how to, you're socialized in that circle and you learn how to function in that and function as a brand, like he can ham it up on Joe Rogan, and that can definitely be a play. He's no longer
absolutely
Elon with a dweeb haircut.
Absolutely, and this is like, I don't want to get into intentions too much. We try to avoid that because that's, endless.
I was just going to say this is all very Marxist.
Yeah, it's tough to get into intention, but I do notice a lot of the rich kids I've known are way more obsessed with fame than regular people I've met. Like, way more concerned about it. And I think it's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs shit. Like, they're already good financially. So what's next is like, the social appreciation. And they honestly are the ones who like really want to be famous musicians or artists or whatever, like way more than regular working people I've met in my life. Like they're way more obsessed about that shit. And I think that's, I don't want to get into intentions with Trump or whatever, but I think his intention is that he wants those people to like him. I think that's his base thing, is that his ego thing, whatever lib argument that is. I think that's his thing. Is like, I don't think he's a real working class hero. I don't think he really gives a fuck about them. I think he needs their adoration.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I
thought the same things at times. Yeah,
I think that considerations for the working class are a little bit more built into his platform than his opposition's. That's how I
100%
word it a little bit more.
But have to be when he ran from the position he did against the Republican establishment. They've already got a lot of, I suppose, sectors of support locked up. So you to run from the outside, you need an outside constituency and to take
right.
And I do think that like the consolidation that's happened of like those fucking losers you just mentioned going over to the Democratic Party, right? The Lincoln Party. The Lincoln Project.
The Lincoln, I was like, yeah.
These fucking born losers. Like I think that probably like stands to like really force Trump into some like, I don't know, maybe some good moves is what I'm saying. I mean, just the passionless mechanics of politics here. The other people have consolidated the middle class. So what does that leave him with? I guess is my point.
Exactly. Yeah. Only the deplorables.
Right, and that's actually like kind of where we want politicians to be. So
yeah, but I suppose Trump can't offer these I suppose who's he like sort of, his base that he's trying to capture are like poorer people, and we sort of feel marginalized from the political process, but he can't really give him heaps of material benefits. So I think that's why he is often doing culture sort of shit as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This new thing he's doing. What was that with like the rent and the unemployment going up?
The Democrat executive order. They're going to sue him for the executive order to continue the freezes and all the benefits.
Yeah, like that's an example of like, I suppose, a material gain for those of his supporter base who are poorer. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think he does definitely concentrate on the cultural resentments more, because he's limited in what he can actually give them.
Absolutely. Yeah, where's the wall? Where's my fucking wall that I voted for? Like, where's that shit? Yeah.
I do think that it's also helpful that, like, I think the rural or ex-urban bourgeois, their interests a lot of the time get conflated as being working class interests. So if you, which is just to say that, like, if you run a campaign trying to win that class, people are going to just hear that as being pro-working class, which is like a great strength. What was it, like Tim Dillon said, like the right is just a scam to make you think that hedge fund managers listen to country music. Like, he just gets to come off as fucking folksy.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
More cultural bullshit.
Yeah, it's clicking with me now as you guys are talking about that. Trump is a LARPer, just like the Red Scare girls. He's just LARPing as this like this right wing Igpol guy, but he's he doesn't really give a fuck about that shit, really. He's just
you gotta have your cultural brands, right?
Yeah.
I don't even think that's a bad thing.
I imagine he's like sort of a class, sort of one of those ordinary New York rich liberal types who goes to the right to get political support.
Right.
Just most of the rest of his class are New York rich liberals who go to the left and lean there to get support.
Right, exactly.
Kind of in the same place in reality when they're talking to each other. They're probably like, I don't give a fuck about immigration.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just
I'm just trying to get my fucking stock portfolio.
Yep.
Right. I was just gonna say, like, with the ease with which he goes from like a lifetime Democrat to being the presidential, the Republican is just as easy as the aforementioned Lincoln Project Republicans voting for for old Sleepy Joe. You know, it's easy. It's easy. It's seamless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, he's a great entertainer. He's a great actor. Greg, and
he's
just kind of pulling this off as a play to try to get the petit bourgeois class, especially like in areas.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads back into the Lumpen piece a little bit as well, because it's kind of Trump's making a play for a class outside the working class to try to get auxiliary support, because obviously the working class is not going to be a force that's going to be strong enough and supported enough on the right to really be a good vehicle to power. So he's trying to go for an auxiliary class that can help him still reach be the same means, the means to the same end for him. That's not exactly on the same page, but it kind of harkens back to how with any like big change or upheaval in society, you could say this was a little bit of a change because it's kind of shifting the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, kind of how their alliance in our society. It's a bit of like a small revolutionary moment there. In any type of moment like that, you have to, or most of the time they're decided by classes, by the working class, by their allegiance to which side they're on, right? So right now Trump's trying to make that play for the bourgeois side of capital. He's trying to say, like, look, we're just like exactly like you. You are, even though you're facing proletarianization, even though your rent's going higher and you're making less money and you might have to pay more because we're bumping up minimum wage or whatever, even though stuff is going to look badly for you because you're a small business, it's really great for corporations, might be fucked out of your business soon. You could be just like us if we're just like you. You have more in common with those people who you employ who are making the same kind of in the same range of money as you as comparison to more capital heads of industry and stuff. So they're trying to say like, hey, look, you can still believe in this system, right? Like this is us representing you in the highest office in the land. We're speaking directly to your needs and concerns because that's what they know they need to do. They need to, because one of the main determinants in any type of revolutionary moment or change, or even just politics in general, is going to be that petit bourgeois class, as well as the lumpen prole nowadays as that's growing. And it's who makes the play for those classes that's going to be able to really kind of make headline or headway as far as change goes. Because right now, no one's got a good whole working class because good work.
Right. I have one question, which is, what do you think the outreach to the lumpen is on the right? Because I have a good idea of what it would be on the left right now, but like, what does that?
Yeah, I don't really know exactly what it's like on the right as far as lumpen outreach, but I know that the Trump play is it's particularly petit bourgeois, small business owners kind of.
I totally disagree with that. I mean, we've had this debate plenty of times on the pod, obviously many times, but like, I really do not buy that his base is all like, you know.
We're not saying that.
No, but he's making a play for them because like they're the people who could easily vote conservative liberal as well, right? So with the way that things are going, he's trying to swing them over. Like you're seeing like PMC radlibs out at BLM marches or whatever the fuck, right? Embracing like quasi left kind of ideology. So he's making the Trump is kind of an iteration, as well as speaking to working class needs and concerns and material issues. Functionality that it's serving is to swing the petty bourgeois to the side of capital.
So yeah, this is a really thoughtful episode. One of our more thoughtful ones, definitely. You know, chewed a lot of shit that we've been hinting, you know, discussing on the edges here and there in previous episodes, but like definitely important to like really flesh it out. So appreciate it a lot, Jack. Great, this is a great episode.
Guys, it's been heaps fun.
Yeah, you want to? What were you gonna say, Flav?
Oh, I was just gonna say, and like, you know, it'd be great to have you on again.
Absolutely.
I'd love to come on again. Like, I probably I would not be hungover.
No, this is.
I was like wading through water trying to talk.
I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah, I mean, just don't let it happen again. I'll be happy to have you.
It's actually preferable if you come on the pod drunk. That seems to be the actual.
Definitely. Yeah, we had a guy vomiting on the pod. You know, I've been sauced on the pod. Slav's been baked on the pod. Like, you know, that's the whole ambiance we're going for. Like,
it's fucked up.
But
I mean, I might not have said this like a year or two ago, but I don't know about. I would feel bad now coming on drunk at 11 a.m. Not so much, but maybe I'm I'm a good trad now.
Those 4 months really changed you.
Nice.
Well, you heard it here, folks.
You wanna
Trad. Yeah.
you wanna drop your ad or anything you want to plug, like where they can read your stuff?
Yeah, just my blog, which is called Larrikin for now. I don't know why I gave it that name.
You want to spell that?
Yeah,
real quick?
spell it.
LARRIKINMAG, and then that's just at WordPress. So I'll give you the link or something like that if you want to. And yeah, I'm just doing my shit on Twitter, just saying a lot of dumb shit all the time. Yeah, if you liked what I was talking about and stuff, probably read the blog. But yeah, don't look for much of it on Twitter because it's just going to be like rugby league commentary and me just making stupid jokes. It's like 80% of what I do, and then like every now and then I'll talk about something political.
That's a great way to use Twitter.
It's the work.
Yeah. Good work, yes.
All right, well, I guess we're good then. Much appreciated. Definitely have you back on soon. It was a good out. Yep.
See you guys.
All right, catch you guys later. Peace.
Juices.